Ross. I'm the chairperson of the Public Works Committee. Go around the room here quick and have some folks introduce themselves here, starting with Kelly.
Kelly Warrington, IT staff.
Nick Dooms, design engineer.
Joe Eichstead, city engineer.
Mr. Mayor in the back and Alderperson Bemke.
Paul Ballard, Public Works Superintendent.
Matt Zacher, Alderman District 3.
Alderperson Rail.
Okay. Item number 2, review the snow removal policy.
All right, so this is just brought back again from last month. What we did to address Alderperson Delaney's concern is in the second paragraph there, just added that it's the intent of the City of Wisconsin Rapids to provide the highest degree of service to the residents of the city, but to accomplish this within budget and framework established by the governing body and to meet the requirements of section 893.83 of the Wisconsin statutes. And I did have a conversation with him earlier this week, and that meets what he was hoping to have done with it. So we want to go over everything else. You guys okay with it?
Oh, I don't know, Paul. I think we've covered this issue pretty heavily here the last couple of Public Works Committee meetings. So
I'll make a motion to pass the snow removal policy.
and I'll second. Any further discussion? Anyone? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Item number 3, review the engineering and street department activities report. The report is part of the packet. Joe, do you want to go over anything, or Paul, while you're still here?
No, just, it's been kind of a slow winter or whatever, but we've still had a few snow happenings here the last month. The garbage is kind of running consistent, and then we're just doing our normal preparation for next year, getting different pieces of equipment ready and things like that, our off-season training and things. Yesterday we completed comp in-person training for trench safety and things like that for 8-9 members of our crew. One thing to bring attention to as part of our stormwater management policy for our stormwater management program, we had 9 of us attend it was called Saltwise Smart Training. Just educated as supervisors. We attended the class down in Madison, but we had some of our operators attend the class. It's just intended to reduce salt usage and what the effects are on the environment and things like that. And it also gives us credit towards some of our stormwater management stuff. So good refresher training and things like that. So
Good deal. Joe?
And for engineering, getting ready, finalizing a couple things on our projects for spring. We've got our crushing contract. That's let. We're going to talk about that as another item this evening, along with our asphalt contract for the year. And then we've got our concrete contract that's currently out for bid as well. And then the rail spur and Rapids Commerce Center, that is officially substantially complete. And so there's a few final things that contractor needs to take care of, fairly minor things, but we're looking at getting CN in there for operating from telco. So,
Okay. Any questions on the engineering or street department activities report? Anyone? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 4, review proposed transportation utility ordinance and review proposed changes to current special assessment ordinances in chapter 5 and 6. Joe?
all right, so I've got some information here just for an update. This packet is, because we're currently in the public comment period, so I did provide this information for anybody that wants to review it. I think we were just over 20-some comments that came in, both in favor and against. But this packet here, if you're interested, and then this document is what the kind of the meat and potatoes for what we'll kind of walk through to the ordinance and changes for things that we need to decide upon before we can revisit the ordinance. So included in the packet was the draft ordinance as presented September 21st, 2021 at council. There were a couple modifications, slight modifications that we made to that draft. They're highlighted or identified in red. The IT manual, that item was updated to the 11th edition. And then at the very end of the draft ordinance, Table A was updated to include the target revenue amount of $500,000. This document. Besides the actual draft ordinance as it sits right now, the transportation utility implementation document, that's the one that kind of all of the items that we need to kind of walk through and get the committee's thoughts on. And then from this conversation, if we're ready, we can finalize draft ordinance language and get it back to committee or council for consideration.
Sure.
Let's see here. So the one section in the draft ordinance that pertains to assessed party fee credit. I know that's been a conversation piece and pertains to how to handle special assessments and folks that are currently paying special assessments on top of transportation utility fee. And so the way that the language in the transportation utility works today for an assessed party fee credit is basically that if you're an assessed party, if they're still paying on assessments, they would get a credit for the transportation utility fee until such time that they're done paying special assessments in full. In addition, if a property or assessed party has paid off their special assessments, say we invoice them and they pay the special assessment fee immediately, that had they not paid it, and would still be continuing to pay, say, 5 years, they would receive a credit on the utility fee for that duration of time.
So both ways, whether you paid it off early or you finance it.
Yep.
We're still gonna get that credit, okay?
Yep.
Okay.
So there is a limitation on that. It can't exceed what the original special assessment amount was. So the credit can't exceed that amount.
Hey, can you guys, I can't even hear some of what Joe's saying. I don't know if the microphone's in the front of the room or something, but he's really quiet and then sometimes it just goes out.
I'll try to speak up, Jake. Is that better?
That's better, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, you can hear.
So the assessed party fee credit, as identified in the draft version, that's essentially how that would function. The question is do we leave that draft language as presented there, or is there a desire to talk about other options? Consider, there's a whole variety of different ways you could go about it, but going through this implementation document here, there's also a waiver of the fee. So there's an outstanding amount. I think Tim has a document here from the finance department, identifies we've got a 10-year outstanding balance of special assessments at 1.2 million. There's also, so that sort of situation would cover people that still have an outstanding balance to pay on special assessments. People that have paid off, that kind of creates a whole nother situation as far as potential refunds. I'm not sure that the committee is interested in going down that path, but I did present it here and open it up for, if anybody wants to. Basically, we're looking for direction. Either we continue with the draft ordinance language as we have it, or if we should be looking to change that in some form or fashion.
I guess I'll speak up on this. To me, we have to start somewhere. With that being said, we can't go back and try to refund everybody's money that has paid into special assessments. It's something that was part of our policy, and that's just, it is what it is at this point, in my opinion. Obviously, with the credit, it makes it so it's a pretty easy thing to do within the function of the utility to try to credit somebody that duration of the payments, and It sounds like it's something that can be kind of easily calculated on our end to establish those credits. I think that that's a great step to try to let the residents know that, you know, we understand you paid some assessments, but you know, this is a new ordinance, and like I said, you got to start from somewhere here. So, anybody have any questions or comments on that? Anybody in the room? Go ahead, Joe.
Just on this specifically, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about right
Sure.
And we can come back to it too.
now. Yeah.
I can keep moving through the document.
I mean, it's a way of, it's a way of, I mean, we're gonna get a lot of flack for that, you know? So it's a way of trying to make it somewhat fair, if we pass this thing through. Does it say there's a question of legality of debt forgiveness?
Yeah, so I guess it is a question that we look to Sue Schill to provide input on. We're not 100% certain at this point if it would be, or if there would be any potential lawsuits that would come out of it. It does, depending on how we go about the process, potentially that could question the legitimacy of what we're currently doing. But I think if we, as long as we're changing ordinances first before passing action, making motions, you know, that certainly is helpful. But yeah, it's a question that's looming out there as far as refunding the money, or even the waiver, the forgiveness of it.
I think the language you used previous to this, describing this, was a credit on the account. So,
Right. Yeah, so the draft ordinance that's currently written is a credit. And so that, the way that works is the transportation utility fee will be credited back to people that have received assessments, currently paying on assessments, and those that would still be paying even though they've paid off their assessments. So they wouldn't be double charged. They wouldn't be paying for the special assessments and the transportation utility fee at the same time.
Okay.
So currently, special assessments get a 15-year window to pay them,
Up to, yeah.
up to.
So yeah, if the threshold is, if your assessment's over 5,000, then you could go out 15 years.
So then you're gonna go back 15 years with a credit?
Well, yeah, it could go out that long, yeah.
So, are there other municipalities that have an ordinance similar to this?
Yeah,
Maintain their roads?
there's a couple, yeah. There's others that are in the process looking at it.
Do you know specifically what towns?
City of Neenah, I think, is one of them.
That's the one that comes to my mind too.
Yeah. I could get your, I don't know if you've signed in or not, but if we have a contact information, I can send you the information that we have on it.
So how long has Neenah been implementing this?
I think it's all relatively in the last
2 years?
2-3 years. Yeah, I think we started looking at it 2 years ago, and Neenah had already had theirs established at that point.
So how do you establish the fee structure for like businesses on the Leader block? They're upstairs or downstairs?
Sure. It all depends on the type of the business that's in there. A lot of the criteria that's used, it all comes from the trip generation manual that the Institute of Transportation Engineers puts out. But so depending on the type of business, it's per square foot. And so those are the two characteristics: type of use, the type of business, and the square foot of the space that they're utilizing. And then from that, you can determine, on average, a property of this size, of this use, generates an X amount of trips.
Okay, well, I own Pasquale's, okay? I wanna know what my assessment's gonna be for this on my utility bill
Sure.
versus what Culver's is gonna pay, okay, versus what McDonald's is gonna pay.
Sure.
They're doing great business right now, and, I mean, I feel the city has added these burdens to my tax bill, going all the way back 30-some years ago when they took the garbage collection away, effectively raised my taxes. So now I'm paying almost $2,400 a year for garbage collection. You add that on top of the $16,000 I'm paying for property taxes. And now you're going to add another tax on me? You've taken the fire protection away from the city and put it on water and light. Now that's on my electric bill. So can you tell me exactly how much I'm going to be assessed?
Be happy to. If we can get your name and contact information,
Sure.
be happy to get you that information. You can get it for any of your Pasquales, you said?
Yes, John Foley. $2930 8th Street South.
What was that?
2930 8th Street South. Okay.
We can call you, email you, send something in the mail, whichever you prefer.
Snail mail.
Okay.
So the burden for Walmart is going to be greater than Pick and Save?
It likely would be, yes. Yep.
Versus the individual burden per household. I mean, certainly any resident can say, yeah, I can afford $20 a month to have good roads. So is this just eliminating special assessments, or is it?
It's a $500,000 target revenue, which includes replacing the special assessments. It's $350,000 on average, and then the remaining $150,000 was set aside for street resurfacing.
Any other questions?
Just pertaining to the trip charges and the engineering,
The ITE.
yeah, thank you, ITE that they have, appreciate it. So if somebody, like the number of trips people, like a residential property is gonna be assessed with or whatever, the number of trips going through, that's not necessarily how many trips are actually going in and out of their house every day. It's more based on like the
Right.
ITE chart that, right?
Yeah, so it creates a uniform way of applying a fee.
Mm-hmm.
And individual properties within each property class may actually differ. They may be lower than what's identified in the manual, or they may actually generate more trips. But it's a way to get differentiate the costs across 8,000 accounts and do it proportionately and uniformly and consistently. There is a mechanism in the ordinance for a property that wants to do an individual study. Say it's Walmart or whomever, that say, well, I would prefer to do our own study. Maybe it's Quick Trip. They might actually have their accounts already. They might count stuff because it's part of their business model and they want to know.
Sure.
So they could submit real counts, real information that they could use to get their information, I guess, verified or corrected or updated.
So I know we're gonna talk about this later, but the $150 charge for somebody who wanted to, is challenge the right word, or to have that question,
Yeah, appeal.
yeah, is because most people, they can say that they don't have as many trips, or they have more trips, or that they're gonna be shooting for less trips than what the ITE says, ITE. And so why have the appeal, or, you know, why challenge it anyways? Because really what we're saying is we're basing it off of a general number that's been agreed upon, that this is roughly what's gonna come in and out of this residence, this business, that business.
You know,
So somebody appealing that, wouldn't we tell them, well, you can appeal it, but it's actually a general number. It's not specifically a number for your property.
right, and I don't know the exact rationale behind it, except that it keeps the option open for, I guess, a unique scenario that isn't exactly covered in the manual.
Mhm.
You know, that you could have a property class that business that's operating that may be widely different from a trip generation standpoint, lower or higher than what the manual shows. And if it's egregious enough, that's where, you know, there's a mechanism that they could appeal it, could review that information and make corrections to it.
So if they ask to do that, they're gonna have to pay $150, or is that something that's still in question right now, or should people have the ability to?
Well, certainly, as you know, as we roll into this, we did it with the stormwater utility as well, that the first few months is when we'll get the most questions, and at that point it's, okay, well, how much information do we have for a particular property at the time? What information can they provide to us? And if we can just correct it and move on. If they're still contesting the number of trips, even though we have better square foot for the property, or maybe we had an error in the type of business.
Mhm.
Those are things where we just want to correct it and get it right. But if they're still contesting, hey, there's no way I'm generating this kind of trips, that's where we need a mechanism to do that.
So it would be $150 to actually do the actual count, the labor that would go into it.
No, it would just be it'd be the review of it. The property would have to actively go out and get actual count data. We won't do the counts
Okay.
ourselves.
I'm just curious, like because I know people are asking me about the $150, so what would the $150 be for them? To just try to deter them from doing it?
Administrative costs, I mean, right?
Yeah, it's administrative costs for reviewing the documents and working with them and trying to get it corrected.
And this is after they haven't had a chance to ask a bunch of questions anyways, before they actually initiate the work that goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, if they've got not for
Mhm.
questions. I mean, if they got questions, we're happy to sit down and answer whatever we can and work with them. I should clarify, it wouldn't be, the administrative appeal wouldn't be for correcting mistakes. If there's mistakes, we want to just work with them and get them corrected. You know,
Mhm.
the right business class, the right square footage for the property. Once we have that properly defined, the administrative appeal would be for whatever the result is. If it's, say, 1,000 trips are being generated and they say, no, that's not right, that's where, you know, okay, well, you can appeal that. And if you provide the proper information, we can then take that and modify your account.
Okay. Just taking a step back then, since you brought up the stormwater sewer thing. So we initiated that utility a few years back. How far back was that? Do you remember, Shane?
Well, Joe would have been here, I think, that was
Yeah.
a long time ago. It was quite a few years ago, wasn't it?
2009?
2009. So did I understand, did you tell me that then became, people took it to court and it's now not allowed, it's illegal to start those up?
No, it's, they passed legislation. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, so with the legislation passed, that that fee now has to be offset on the tax roll.
Okay.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So at the time when the city did it, it wasn't no law prohibiting it. Subsequent to that, sometime, I don't know if it was months or years after, the state said, well, as of this date, any new stormwater utilities, you'd have to deduct the levy by that amount. So you can still create them, from my understanding.
Correct.
You just, you can't impose a new fee.
Okay, so chances are pretty good they're gonna do the same thing with this once it gets far enough along.
There is a proposed bill that has been in the last 4 or 6 weeks, I think, is when I heard about it. I got an update earlier this week, that it sounds like that bill is not going to proceed further, that it will die. But that doesn't mean that it won't come back. And I haven't seen anything official on this. This is just word of mouth from folks that have relationships and keep an eye on things at the state level.
Okay. So the stormwater utility charges this much, but then that much has to come off the levy, but not for us? Are we grandfathered into that?
Yeah, so right now, there's no law
For storm-
prohibiting. For
Stormwater, yeah, so
Yeah,
that's how that went. We got grandfathered and so we didn't need to go back and remedy that?
right, that's correct.
And that's kind of,
And that would be if legislation passed. And that just depended on.
yeah, so, I mean, okay.
That happens quite frequently. We had the same situation with our garbage collection. With our garbage collection, when we went to the automated system, excuse me, we were proposing, in what was our opinion, a higher level of service than what we are currently right now, where we were going to do a like a once a month bulk item pickup, but there was going to be a fee associated with that because we didn't currently have that. We were also going to provide the time period where if you had a graduation party at your house this last weekend and you exceeded the 96 gallons of garbage that your can had, you could set the 4 or 5 bags of extra garbage next to the can, call down to the garage and pay, $2 a bag or something like that. Then the driver would simply get out, dump the can, reload the can, dump it again. And we had some other things associated with that too. We sent our plan down to Madison to have, I think it was Department of Administration, review it. And they said, no, you can't charge for these additional services because you are already providing garbage collection. So we couldn't charge for the higher level of service than what we were currently providing. And we're like, well, no, we're not charging for the same service that we're providing. We're charging for actually a higher level of service. And they said, no, if we did that, whatever we would charge would have to come off of, we'd have to credit it back to the levy.
Okay. So it remains to be seen then if this, right now, you're saying there's a bill in the state legislature, but you're thinking it's gonna die, but it could come back.
That's.
But if we can get this
the
in
latest.
and done, then we'd be grandfathered in anyways, if something did come down?
Perhaps. Yeah, I don't know what the exact language would be, that if they approve something at the state level. Special assessments are not part of the general tax levy.
Mm-hmm.
We're replacing it, but if interpretation or the language is such that they can include it, I guess there's a lot of question marks that.
Like it kind of defeats the purpose if we were to set this tax up, fee structure up, whatever we want to call it, and then reduce that on the levy, right? Because it would be a wash and we just have more administrative fees to get the same amount of money. I don't know. I guess I'm still feeling like that's just a little bit sneaky. Like, I know, I assume that what we're trying to do here, I understand why we're trying to do it, but it does seem kind of sneaky, a little bit,
Agree with you. It's a shift.
Continue.
I just have two quick questions. One, going back to the appeals process, have we considered, what if there's a change in use in the property? Has that been considered, and what's gonna be the process?
Change in use, Joe had mentioned that would be part of the appeal. It's,
Okay,
they get the business straightened out as far as square footage, and then they give them the data, and then at that point, if they,
so, but let's say in 2 or 3 years, the building is sold and it went from a restaurant to a store. Okay.
Yeah, we need a way to track and update our records. So I think business is changing, that's gonna happen, and we just need to update the accounts. But it's if the business doesn't agree with the determination, that they wanna appeal the determination that we made, that, hey, we think this is the property class type, this is how you're operating, we wanna appeal that determination. And then I think they bring it back to, let's see here, I think they bring it back to the Public Works Committee. Yeah. Public Works Committee shall hear and decide appeals made on the basis of alleged error in determination.
My second question is for the special assessments, you've got it at 1.2 million, and what's the impact gonna be on that $500,000 every year, do you know? Do we know yet?
No, that I don't know yet.
Okay.
But I can relay that question to Tim, Finance, and see if he can crunch those numbers for us.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'd like to go back to the appeal process, or at least the fee though. I mean, in my mind, if somebody's gotta actually put the legwork in to do the traffic counting, and they end up winning their appeal, I think that fee should be waived.
Sure.
And I think we should change the ordinance to state as such.
You write that note in here.
I mean, I understand the comments about calling this a tax as well, but, what we need to keep in mind is right now at our funding level, we're really, the priority is taking care of special assessments. And with that being said, I mean, sooner or later, you're gonna pay that fee, whether it's in special assessments or it's with this utility now. I know we've talked previously about that. It's gonna take an awful long time for the average resident or most likely some of these businesses to pay the amount in utility fee that it would actually cost them to be specially assessed. So I think folks need to really keep that in mind as well. You want to keep on there, Joe?
Yes. I guess just before we move off the appeal, it may be appropriate to include, from the date of ordinance adoption, so many months that the appeal charge or fee isn't in effect. I think, like I said, there's gonna be a period of time that it's best to just work through some of these things and get the accounts and questions answered.
Any ideas on what that time frame might look like in your opinion?
It's been 6 months.
6 months?
I think we should have them pretty much all.
I agree with that.
That sounds good.
Okay. I'll add that in. All right, so back to the implementation document. So we also have special assessments that are pending. They're from 21 road construction projects. The projects are complete. We have special assessments that are just on hold at this point. We haven't finalized the proposed assessment amounts. We haven't scheduled the assessment hearings, and there would be a final resolution that we'd be looking for from the committee at at some point. I guess I'm just looking to verify that the intent that we still hold those assessment hearings then, assuming if we're going to stick with the assessed party credit, that we would then finalize the 2021 assessments and get those proposed assessments out, the assessment hearing scheduled, and proceed with a final resolution. So committees can always pass the final resolution without assessments, because it's just a question on verifying, I guess, a level of intent there.
My thoughts on this is, it's taken quite a while to wrap all the information around this topic so we can come to an educated decision. And during that time, some of these assessments, that folks are hoping to be part of this utility, or the timeline is ticking away on those, and I understand that. But I think the purpose of this all along was to try to stop the assessments that we put on the moratorium from being billed out. And I think that's the way I'd like to continue to roll with it.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that?
You're just asking if the people that are on hold, if we're keeping them on hold so that we can pass, in the end, if we're hoping it passes, and then if it passes, then they won't be assessed, they'll just get their bills.
More so that either way, we've got to do something with them at some point. We need to finalize the process through final resolution. I guess the verification is maybe more so for our own purposes in engineering, if we should proceed with preparing the proposed assessments and scheduling the assessment hearing, or if the intent is largely a formality. We'll go through the process and we'll pass a final resolution for those without special assessment charges.
I think I would agree with the latter there, what you described. Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with what you guys are talking about there.
Okay. Well, at least, we'll proceed with, at this point.
So at this point, 2021 special assessments wouldn't be formally billed? Or
Well, yeah, we would just prepare it such that
It would
we
be a
wouldn't go
zero
through all
charge
the
or-
proposed assessment calculations. We'll still have to put the agenda item on to deal with each of them, but if it's just the formality of approving a final resolution without cost, then we can do that at the appropriate time.
I mean,
in
if this
process.
utility goes through, that's the route I want to take right now, assuming that it goes through.
Okay.
Yes.
I would agree with that.
All right. And then I guess in a very similar vein, we've got 2022 projects that have preliminary resolutions. Basically what we would do in that instance would be to bring back a preliminary resolution for each of those projects to the committee. But the preliminary resolution, the new one would be different. It wouldn't have the special assessment powers identified in the resolution. It would just be the city's intent to do a project here. And we'd just bring those back into the committee for consideration at that time.
Right.
I guess I left a spot in here before we jump off of the transportation utility ordinance, if there's any other things any questions or anything else that was identified that should be modified or changed.
I got a couple.
Go ahead.
In this, is it a 2/3 majority to change anything in this transportation utility once it's passed?
That hasn't been written in, but that's something that language could be proposed in some form or fashion. If the committee would like to see that written in some way, or if there's
I would like to, just because
I
I think
agree.
it gives us some protection for the residents.
Yep.
So that's to change the fees, the target revenue.
Correct.
Yeah. think it would benefit something as potentially as big as this could become to have an independent counsel outside of just the engineering department, like somebody that oversees this, that's impartial. I agree with what's been said. It's, some emails that have been passed around, but I think it's again safer to have an independent counsel out there to oversee this.
So, a utility that's administered outside of the city staff?
Yes. Well, somebody that's overseeing it, right? I mean, engineering is still gonna be the implementers, but instead of just having the council, it would have a committee, not a committee. I think the council is different than a committee, correct?
Well, this is a Public Works Committee,
Right.
but nothing can happen in the utility without the elected body making those decisions.
So what's the difference with a council then? Am I saying that wrong? Like, for the planning and zoning, isn't that a council or what is?
That's a commission.
Commission, my fault. I had a feeling I was saying that wrong.
So
Commission, what's the difference then?
a commission has some authority to make it a final decision. Like we've run into those before where the plan commission is the final say, where a public works committee is just making a recommendation to the full council and the council makes that decision.
I mean, do you think this is big enough that we need a special, again, we went from, special assessments to $2.5 million pretty quick already. Like this has the potential to be big. Do we want some kind of security outside of just the common council?
I guess who stopped that 2.5 million? It was basically the council members, through that discussion.
It was, yeah. I mean, again, this I understand the way this was designed now was designed. It was interestingly designed, and it all kind of led back to one point, and that was the Public Works Director position at the time. But I guess what I'm seeing now, what I've learned is this should have some protections to it, and that's why I'm just asking the question: is it bigger than the council? Is it big enough to say we should have a commission that's outside of the council, kind of overseeing it? Also,
Can I speak my thoughts to that?
Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you. So, a couple things there. First of all, I extremely believe that we need to put a clause in that it's a 2/3 majority to approve any changes to the transportation utility. That's the only way that I'm going to vote for it, is if there's some protections in there for the residents, as Matt said, to make sure that this wouldn't get out of hand in the future. That's the only way I'm going to vote for it. And in regards to a commission, I'm not in favor of that, though. I've voiced this at the past few common council meetings, and I believe one of them was about the planning commission, and I've actually voted to not approve the minutes from there because I don't believe that the city elected officials should not have the power to overturn a commission's decision. And I think we spent almost 90 minutes one night regarding the sign over at Assumption. I do think that the city council should be able to make these decisions. However, in this case, it should be a 2/3 vote. I don't think a commission appointed by, in this case, I believe maybe the mayor should make these decisions, because then you're getting into the area, well, if you get a mayor in place that wants to, if per se, abuse the utility, that commission could be the one to do it.
Thanks, Jake. You might have missed it, but we did discuss that. I seen you were off there for a little while, and we did decide to throw the 2/3 majority in there for changes in the fee structure. So
Right.
go ahead.
Any commission, committee, even water and light commission, those are all approved by council members. I may make an appointment of somebody, but they still have to go through city council for their approval. Every one of them. There's nothing that a mayor can solely appoint somebody. We have some people on commissions and committees by the nature of their job, school superintendent. But any of those positions have to be approved by council, or you yourself pick those people, like Water and Light Commission. So I think if you want to create a commission to oversee this, it's not going to be independent. It's all going to be approved by you. So I think you're just creating another redundant layer of bureaucracy when it should just go to you.
So do we think that it's obviously something in the Public Works Committee department.
And it would come through Public Works, any changes in the utility.
Yes.
Would have to come through this committee to go to council.
Yeah, wouldn't it go through finance as well?
Or finance, yeah, on fee schedules. That's right.
And it's also gonna get approved through budget time on expenditures of those dollars too.
So we feel like there's enough layers of security to
Maybe a lot of oversight.
yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, nothing's gonna happen without council's approval. And if you have that 2/3 in there, which I think is a good idea, then it's gotta come through council. And 6 of you are gonna have to vote in favor of it versus technically on most other votes, it's 4 and the mayor can break the tie, so that would be 5. So this really, honestly, it takes the mayor out of the process and it's 6 council people out of the 8.
Okay.
Which I think it's a higher standard to try to get past.
All right. That we are only going to use this for special assessments as of right now? Is that how it's kind of written, or we're only using this for special assessments? And I feel like the special assessments should include sidewalk, curb, and road. Does that change that number drastically?
No, the 350,000, the average, which is the average special assessment revenue amount per year, that's for street, curb and gutter, and sidewalk.
Okay. So do we need to write it in here that for now, like?
So I had, based upon the prior motion, to set the target revenue at 500,000, based upon 350 for special assessments, and then 150 for street resurfacing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's identified in Table A.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's up to you if you want further language on that, actually in the ordinance, on as far as the 2 things that you can utilize the funds for.
I think the ordinance was a little broader. I mean, I don't know if you want to narrow
It is
that down.
broader, yeah.
I think there was quite a bit more, I think there was several other items listed in there above and beyond that, so.
Above, go curb and gutter and sidewalk and road.
Yeah, I don't know if you have it there, Bill.
Yeah, so you could, based on here, it's a broad identification of street-related infrastructure, transportation-related administrative costs, street pavement preservation activities, with a bunch of different activities identified, street construction and or reconstruction activities, sidewalk construction or reconstruction of sidewalks, street lighting and appurtenances, traffic control and signalization, maintenance, construction or reconstruction, and then of course the structures used for those activities, storage, maintenance, repair.
Okay, so I feel like we gotta get more narrow, don't we, on that? And make it for, because what I just heard there is we were throwing in buildings and equipment and all that stuff that shouldn't really be in there. This should be specifically for the making of roads, sidewalks, and gutters.
And resurfacing.
And resurfacing. Like, I think we should narrow that down to that so that we're not confused. And I guess some of it's gonna take care of the administration of this, I would assume, because we have to administrate it. But I think that there's other council members that shared that concern that it could be used for basically anything if we keep it that broad. So how do we narrow it down, and are we in agreement to narrow it down?
I think you eliminate item G.
Yeah, that would be for the structures.
That everything else fits into the road and gutters and sidewalks and administration?
E and F do, I don't know.
E&F for the street lighting, traffic control, signalization items.
Is that something that That's not something a resident would typically pay for or a business would pay for on that.
It's your general taxes you do.
Right.
I think we
So
pay
it-
about $500,000 for street lighting in the city, so.
So are we gonna take money from here to add to that money from to pay for the street lighting and all that, or can we
No.
take that out
The
of there?
option to.
It gives you so just the ordinance language would provide a general list of items that future committee or council or, whoever it is, that you could use funds for. And if table A is identified specific to public works construction, so much for special assessments. Right now, the amount is small compared to what the public works construction fund budget is.
Mhm.
And so we've got public works construction and pavement replacement program, the two actual dollar amounts identified there. So I guess it all depends. I mean, it leaves the option open that if table A is updated in the future, it could have dollars identified for traffic signals. It all depends on what you want to do with it.
To me, I mean, everything on the list minus G is basically street-related construction that I agree, council should have the opportunity to say if this utility funds that or not. G, the structures, the maintenance and the repair of equipment, I think that's a whole nother animal, and I think that should be taken off that list.
I guess I'm still thinking like, if we're saying this is for the streets, then it should be for this, for this replacing the special assessments.
And we haven't gotten there yet, but Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 ordinances will have to get modified at the same time that transportation utilities considered, because they deal with special assessments and how we would move forward with those.
Okay.
And so, assuming that special assessments are going away for street reconstructions, that would be off the table as far as trying to use that in the future to recapture funds from street reconstruction projects.
Okay. Sure. All right, so do we say that we're looking at 500,000? Can we keep that until we get a grasp as to how this whole thing's going and how it's working out? Can we keep that at 500,000 without raising it for 5 years? And then can we put a maximum of 3% increase per year on that?
And any changes is by 2/3 vote then, right? Because you
If
can't.
we're gonna do any more than that, I mean, I can see somewhat of a living wage if it goes through, but I don't wanna see a massive increase. I guess it should be,
Yeah, the problem is you can't say it's like fixed for 5 years, because in 3 years the council could come by and say, we're gonna eliminate it now. By a 2/3 vote or whatever you set that at. You can't pigeonhole them into a 5-year and then they can't change it in 5 years, because every council will have that option to vote on an ordinance to change it or update it. But if you put a 5-year like moratorium in there, that would work, but just know that council, if you set that at a 2/3 vote to change the ordinance, could do it at any point within that 5 years.
Can I speak to that?
Go ahead, Dean.
Hi. Already remember that we're voting on something while we're the council, and I get real concerned about protecting citizens from new councils that they elected. I agreed like to protect the residents, but I'm on the council right now, so I'm voting to protect the residents at a certain amount. What happens in new councils, that's not up to me, because those will be elected by those residents that it's the new council to protect, I guess. So yeah, I understand the 2/3 majority, but trying to handcuff future councils with deadlines and such, I'm not really in favor. I think what we need to do is vote on what we're in favor at this point. And at this point, $500,000 max, I'm totally in favor, and 2/3 majority to change that. I'm okay with that. Thanks.
Thanks, Dean. I completely agree with what Mr. Bevin said there, so.
Yeah, I still keep saying nobody's trying to tie hands. I think it's just we're creating a new tax out of thin air, and we call it something different. But so I guess I'm trying to protect, because I've made it clear I don't like this. I mean, it started out sounding super great. We were gonna pay for all of our bills and it's gonna be awesome. But yeah, so certainly not trying to tie hands, just trying to keep the process as slow as possible while we implement a new tax on our residents paying the bill. I'm good, thanks.
All right, so moving then past the draft transportation utility ordinance and the changes that were identified, there are some modifications to Chapter 5 sewer and water and Chapter 6 street and sidewalk ordinances. So if the transportation utility ordinance is approved, special assessments for the road reconstruction projects would no longer be applicable. The transportation utility would collect funds then in lieu of the special assessments for pavement, curb and gutter, sidewalk, street-related costs. Sanitary lateral replacement costs as part of road reconstruction projects, that's normally an assessed item, but that would be assumed by the wastewater utility as part of their rate structure. In fact, it's already part of their rate structure today. So they would just incorporate that change in with the utility, and the same goes for water and light. And the water assets, the special assessments would, or at least could, still apply for new developments and annexations. It's a recommendation that we'd still keep the language in there for those types of things. So if a brand new land is being platted, new utilities extended, or new areas annexed into the city, that those types of projects could still have special assessments. Any of the reconstruction work, anything that's replacement of existing, would be covered by the transportation utility fee.
Would that then fall under going back to the credit? If somebody was to do that, would we consider a credit for that, or would you recommend that we just move forward with the charges as well from that point?
Isn't that usually a developer's cost?
Yeah, so there's usually there is a so there's different ways that a development could take place. Oftentimes they're spurred by a developer that says, I want to develop this and have it part of the city, and sometimes developers will pay for things 100% at their own. Sometimes the city is asked and has an interest in participating, subsidizing in some form or fashion as part of the development agreement. Sometimes that agreement is, well, the city will charge special assessments. It's a mechanism for the city to install the utilities in the street and help with the project, and it does lower the cost for the developer if the city chooses, that's beneficial steps to take. So I guess it'd likely be tied to a developer's agreement in most cases.
So it's on a case-by-case basis, ultimately, when you're being annexed in or something like that, or annexed in.
And that would still go to the council, any developer type agreement
Correct.
for your review and approval.
I would recommend keeping the special assessments in there.
Okay.
For that. If you're in agreement with that.
All right. And then the next item is from Chapter 6, Streets and Sidewalks, for specific to sidewalk repair. So there's a variety of sidewalk maintenance that occurs each year, and in accordance with that section of Chapter 6, it's not technically a special assessment, or at least it doesn't follow that same process, but the sidewalks are inspected, and anything that's determined to be unsafe or has failed, the city identifies that and notices the property owner. And currently, property owners are 100% responsible for keeping the sidewalks adjacent to their properties maintained. And so after 20 days notice, if the repairs haven't been made, the city goes in and fixes it and then invoices the property owner for those repairs. The reason I bring it up is that with the transportation utility associated with reconstruction projects, we're getting rid of assessing for sidewalk related to those types of projects. Being that sidewalk repair is not technically a special assessment, although it functions very similarly, that the thought was that maybe we should incorporate that as part of the transportation utility, and then this 20-day notice in the 100% costs to property owners, and that invoicing paperwork mechanism would go away. So that section of the ordinance would be revised sufficiently to make that change.
Do you have a rough number? I know it's not the same, but an average as to what we pay for that, or what everybody pays for that on a yearly basis?
That, so the budget that we currently have, I think we usually end up getting around somewhere between 50 and 80,000 is the amount of work that's done every year. As far as what's invoiced and what's collected, it's a good question. I know we'd have those numbers. I think talking with the finance director, the revenue that's paid back to the city for those repairs is largely already accounted for in that 350,000.
So, but what you're saying is we have 500,000 to work with for this utility, but of that, if we include this sidewalk repair, it could be another $50,000 to $80,000 a year, somewhere in there.
Not additionally. That's what I mean. I think it's already as part of the 350,000 revenue that we see, because it's all invoiced from the engineering department, just like special assessments are, but technically different. But I wanted to point it out as a possible change, at least for consideration. Is do we want to leave that sidewalk repair mechanism in there or take it out? I think it cleans it up and makes it straightforward than what the utility is paying for and responsible for from infrastructure standpoint.
Yeah, I think most people would appreciate that.
Removing it.
Removing
Yeah,
it,
removing it. You know,
We all benefit from using the sidewalks. It's
Right.
not like my sidewalk.
and I'd say the majority of the sidewalk is gonna be installed by the city or someone contracted by the city, and through no fault of the property owners, you know, doing the sidewalk ends up, you know, needing repair, you know, so I think that should also be covered under utility, yes.
All right. Okay, and that gets me to the last item here, also dealing with sidewalk, Chapter 6, Streets and Sidewalks. There's currently in 6.04 provisions that identify when sidewalks should be installed. I actually don't have that in front of me right now, but basically it defines if it's a collector street, we should put sidewalk in. If we're on any street that has 50% or more existing sidewalk, we should finish the sidewalk when we do the street reconstruction project. And there's five or six provisions in there. I guess what I'm proposing here as a modification to that is we keep the ordinance provisions in there as a foundational guide to use on when sidewalks should be installed and where they should be installed, but that we supplement the written text with incorporating the city's official map, where we can show that here's a clear plan on where the city intends to put sidewalk. And oftentimes, year after year, we've actually got a referral here later tonight that I was going to share with you guys, that 1 or 2 projects every year come back to the committee for falling in the gray area between the ordinance provisions. And it creates confusion in as far as design and modifying designs. You know, property owners, some property owners want it, some property owners don't want sidewalk. But I think the intent of the ordinance as it's written is trying to describe a plan. This is where we want it, this is where we don't want sidewalk. It falls a little bit short because there's a lot of circumstances and scenarios where we might have a local street that people are using to connect point A to point B, and sidewalk makes 100% sense there. And that's something that could be identified in an official map. And it creates a solid plan that we can use to move forward, and each year that plan can be updated and adjusted as necessary. But it gives us a solid framework to continue our capital improvements and project designs.
Shane?
And I agree with Joe in the sense that, Joe and Nick are designing these projects, and then in the final hour near the completion, that somebody brings, like today, a petition. Was it today a petition or yesterday a petition? They don't want sidewalks on their road next year, which probably doesn't make sense to have sidewalks. And now their design projects are ready to go. And if they are, luckily this project, they kind of designed it with some forethought that maybe we won't have sidewalks on this project, but it may not be. So then they're back, Nick and Joe are back to the table now redoing all that work. And so if we had a plan of what we were going to do for sidewalks ahead of time, it would make more sense because they would save them on redesign. We don't want them spending time redesigning and redoing work when they should be continuing on the next year's projects.
So that map would be based upon road classification?
Yeah, so the current official map is all road classification, and we would add a sidewalk component to that to show.
And just list, these are the types of roads that will have sidewalk, 1 side, 2 sides, no sidewalk.
Yeah, it would actually lay out the whole sidewalk network.
Okay.
The ordinance today identifies that all collector streets and above should have sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get to a collector street project and it becomes a concern of putting sidewalk in or not. And not that an official map can't be changed, but it's clearly tying in a system. It's a full plan. The ordinance does a decent job, but it just seems year after year these projects fall within the lines, within the text. And it's all situational, but that official map, you could look at all those situations ahead of time and have a plan, something that is agreed upon by the council, by the city, that makes sense. The project that the mayor was talking about, we designed it based upon the ordinance. And the question is, does it really need sidewalk there? Well, the ordinance says that the plan, based on the ordinance provision, we put sidewalk in, you finish it off, it's got more than 50% existing sidewalk. But all the property owners, a lot of them, I should say all of them, they don't want the sidewalk. And I don't think there's really
Smith Street.
I don't think there's really a reason to have sidewalk there.
Right.
That's an example of something that could be thought out ahead of time in the official map.
Sure.
It's kind of an offset from its own little subdivision.
Yeah.
Really not a need for sidewalk here. The official map already has that figured out, planned out.
So you would go through and create this official map, you'd bring it to council or public works, and we cover it, go through it,
Yeah.
one time kind of a deal.
We
and
did
then-
that last year by Sunoco.
Fremont Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
We had to go through that.
Yeah, it would be on a
Street.
citywide.
But it'd
Now
be a
I know what you're-
citywide scale,
that's what
so
you're
we
talking
wouldn't be,
about.
Yeah.
we wouldn't
Doesn't
be
make
talking
sense.
about this issue like we are now, because that would be
Right before construction.
predetermined, right?
Right, because you look at a couple of years ago, the contentious street was Chase. Chase is truly a collector street, the streets that fill into that street, the avenues there probably don't need sidewalks, but Chase as a collector street should have sidewalks, but it was contentious and people didn't want sidewalks. But that probably makes sense to have sidewalks there. But I guess don't want to announce it. However, you know, if sidewalks are no longer part of special assessments and you're not being assessed 100% for sidewalks, then as a resident, you're not going to care if there's sidewalks there or not.
Well, I think people will still care, because there's still maintenance, you're still,
Oh, that's true.
you gotta shovel snow or hire somebody to shovel your snow.
That's true.
So I don't think it's,
So in
We'll
regards
see.
to this, did we need to agree on, or did we need to?
I just wanted to propose it. I mean, we're making changes to chapter 6 because of the special assessments, and we have sidewalk being discussed. And so, well, if there's an interest in doing that, we can include revisions for this official map and add that in at the same time. And so it's more so verification if that sounds like a worthwhile thing to pursue.
I think it does.
I think it's important for engineering staff to have that plan laid out so they know when they're designing a road for in 2 years from now that in the final hours, sidewalks aren't going to be pulled out or put in, and then they have to redesign.
Yeah, so I guess maybe I'm just not following. What is it that you need from us, like right now?
General consensus.
Just general consensus, yeah. No
That
motion
we
at this
should,
point.
specifically, that we should,
Create a
An official map.
Official map for sidewalk
of what the city's plan is for sidewalk.
and incorporate that into proposed draft language in chapter 6 along with the other sidewalk repair changes and the special assessment changes.
okay, so we're gonna go through the entire city and have a sidewalk map and try to figure out ahead of time if we're putting a sidewalk there or not?
Yeah, so we have an official map today that lays out all of the street network and the street classification. So
Right.
existing and proposed collector streets, arterial streets, they're all grid network on a map.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we get to those streets, these collector and above, those are the streets that we're designing for because they're on the official map. And we've gotten to like 3rd Avenue and is it 3rd Avenue? I think it's 3rd Avenue. That was, I don't know if it was classified an expressway or something on the official map, but it was just next door here between Grand and Jackson Street, and the official map needed to be updated. We weren't going to replace that block as an expressway anymore at this point. So we brought the official map back in, and there was discussion about it, and then action taken to change that, and then that's what we based our design upon. But otherwise, if the official map shows, we're going to have a 80-foot right-of-way on the street, well, we're providing a cross-section of roadway. It's already laid out in the official map, typical sections for that 80-foot right-of-way. And if property owners are doing CSMs on their properties, certified survey maps, and changing boundaries, the platting of those lands needs to conform to the city's official map. So if sometimes it results in dedicating 3 feet of property for meeting the official map requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So it's official. It's a statute type item that the city has this, and so we definitely follow it.
So we want to just do as much as possible ahead of time, so that it's
Yeah.
not every year we're running into certain questions that may or may not come up.
Right. In the written text of the ordinance primarily wants to, at least the intent appears to be, to build out the sidewalk network throughout the entire city.
Mm-hmm.
That may be a hard sell today to actually do that. And that's maybe why we're getting a lot of projects that get kicked back to be reviewed. Are we going to put sidewalk in here, or it doesn't make much sense to anymore at this point? And so having a plan that actually identifies today where the best places to put sidewalk are, that would be helpful.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay.
Quick question. Is this gonna be taken up separately of the transportation utility?
It could be. It's part of chapter 6, and there's other changes in chapter 6 that would need to be addressed at the same time as the transportation utility changes. But this particular item could be taken up separately.
Yeah, I don't know if I wanna muddy the waters, the same vote as the transportation utility and trying to make an amendment mid-vote. I'm not in favor of changing the sidewalk code at this point. I like the fact that currently it's positioned to build out the sidewalk network in the city in places where deemed necessary. I'm not sure I wanna add another issue to the transportation utility vote or try to amend it the night of, because I might end up, not voting for the utility because I don't like to change to the sidewalk. I don't wanna see those two on the same vote.
Maybe a referral to update the official sidewalk as a referral item, that's something that can be worked on.
Sure. Could do that.
Yep.
Okay. So I think that concludes what I was hoping to kind of run through regarding ordinance changes.
Okay.
So if there isn't anything else on that, I'm not looking for any particular action tonight. What we would do is, based upon the preferences here, we'll get the ordinance language updated, and then get it back for, because there's a chance it could be reviewed at council, but maybe I don't know, Mayor, is that?
I think maybe another committee, final version A committee versus trying to,
Okay.
I think it's better to take it to committee and have that discussion.
Do we wanna, I don't know, is this an appropriate question right now, set up another committee meeting to try to just keep it, seeing how we're waiting on special assessments and all that?
I guess it's up to the committee what you guys wanna do, or council.
Yeah.
Well, to me, if it's something that time is of the essence to ensure we get our 2021 assessments, special assessments sorted.
I mean, we really gotta get to the point of saying, are we actually adopting this ordinance or not?
Right.
And then we can start making progress after that, or stop it, I guess, depending on where the vote goes.
In my mind, there's nothing stopping us right now from approving this ordinance as amended as we went over it tonight, either, right? Other than, it would be nice to have all community members present for an action like that, you know what I mean? But I guess what are your thoughts on that, Zach?
To approve this for council coming up,
Correct.
I don't think we wanna wait another month. Again, like, we wanna get to the point where we either know that we're moving forward or we're not with it,
Mhm.
and at least then we can, have some peace of mind one way or the other. So your question is, if we can get this done and bring it to the council, I'm fine bringing it to the council. That's what you're
As
saying.
amended as what we've gone over tonight.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would make a motion to do so, to send the ordinance on to council as amended as we've gone over here tonight.
I'll second.
Any other discussion, Shane?
Just to let you know that, if it's not unanimous, it still needs a second reading. And I think the credit is still something that really needs to be discussed on what that credit is gonna cost.
Mhm.
So I still think there's a little information there that you're gonna need.
So to clarify, motion is to move forward with the proposed ordinance without any changes to the sidewalk policy.
For specific sidewalk, specific to the official map component?
Right, so to what I spoke about before, are we just moving forward with addressing the transportation utility and voting on it? Nothing,
That's
no other
correct.
changes specifically?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, and I agree, and I'm glad the committee's moving forward. No matter which way this goes, it's time to vote on the transportation utility. We've been sitting on it, talking about it for a while, and there's been a good amount of public outreach in this past month to spike up engagement, so I delay it another month or two wouldn't be appropriate in my opinion.
And to Shane's concerns about the credit, I mean, is that something that, you know, we can, with being that there's gonna be 2 readings, that's obviously something that we can probably work through yet, as you know, council looks at this as well.
And next week, we can talk to Tim and kind of get a better idea of what that credit could be, what it could cost versus 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 5 years, how far out you go.
Yep.
And then, because that will be something, you know, like it's gonna be a refund and what that refund's gonna look like.
So we have to make a decision, so I guess my question comes up again, do you wanna meet one more time maybe? If you guys can handle that and get the 2 options basically
Sure.
detailed out so that we can basically make a decision on it. I'm more than happy to come again if you guys are okay with
Before
it.
council?
Before council. Cause that's the one where we wanna at least present them with one of the 2 options, or do we wanna present the council with both options and let them decide? Or, you know, I mean, in the end, they don't have to agree with what we're saying anyways, they can hold it out. Right?
I don't know, Tom's got any thoughts? I don't know.
So I guess just to throw this
I think
in,
you probably need another meeting. Or to get more, everybody put
that
together,
worked
it
out.
seems like there's gotta be more put together, final things gotta be more put together than just say, we're going to or not going to.
Maybe another meeting with the draft, the revisions to the draft ordinance, and then that last component on the credit, trying to figure that out, could be decided at that meeting. And then have these revisions to the ordinance that at least you can look at another meeting before the council.
so the draft ordinance language that we have today, it has the assessed party credit. That would be a credit on the transportation utility fee until that party's special assessments run out. And so there would be a loss in transportation utility revenue to some extent for accommodating that credit. Outside of a credit, it'd be completely different language in there.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a forgiveness of special assessment, outstanding special assessment balance that a property has not to pay yet,
Okay.
or refund. So that would be a completely separate ordinance language option, depending on, you know, if that was a route that.
Are you
that the
concerned
committee wanted
about
to go.
the legality of those 2 options that you just mentioned?
I don't know. I would defer to Sue Schill on that. I just know it was a question, and I don't know that there would be any lawsuits. I guess there could be with anything, but could be with the utility too, I suppose.
I personally, I think the credit is garbage, because it's so small. If you're talking a residential homeowner, you're talking maybe, you know, you're talking a fee of $20 a year, so what's that work out to a monthly credit? So you might get a $3 credit on your bill, which really amounts to nothing, honestly. I think I prefer, or at least like the refund option, because it's dollar for dollar. So if I paid $400 on my special assessment this year, I'd get $400 back. You're not going to see that with a credit, because you're only getting a $3 credit a month on residential.
So
So
for
then
residential, it'd be credited the $20 fee, transportation utility fee per year for however many years that they're still paying on special assessments.
Mhm.
That's how that
So
would
if it's
function.
15 years, it's nothing. Next.
And then on the other hand, if you're a commercial property that maybe paid off the $20,000 assessment that they had up front, that could go out 15 years, and, you know, at a trip fee of $2,000 per year,
They could make money.
that's where that cap would come into play, where they can't make, the credit disappears after they've hit their special assessment amount. So it's the disparity between residential properties and
Mhm.
commercial, and trying to weigh that.
And that's why I think a refund's fair, because that's exactly what you paid in. It was what you'll get back,
Just over time.
just, over that time. Of whatever number of years you're gonna do a refund, whether it be
Right.
1, 3, 5.
So this document, this came from the finance department, and it's got an outstanding balance over the course of a 10-year period. So outstanding special assessment balance of 1.2 million. And then the bottom section of this report for a 5-year period shows the special assessment payoff payments that were made. So I don't have a clear picture from Tim on this of exactly what's included in the payoff payments that were made, but that total for that 5-year period that's identified is 1.1 million. And so potentially that would be the, if you went back 5 years to refund what people have paid in, it's potentially that 1.1 million over that 5-year period. And then the forgiveness portion, waiving the outstanding balance, if looked at on a 10-year period, that's about 1.2 million.
So I would agree that this needs a little more refining, obviously.
We would want Sue to do her due diligence to find out, right, one way or the other, or both, just so we have
on
the
the legal end?
information. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can do that. And I guess if there's any direction on either the forgiveness or refund end of it, they can help narrow down kind of what the thoughts might be if that option were pursued.
Mhm.
Because you could go back 1 year, you could go back 10 years, you could go back 15 years. You could include forgiveness, you could include forgiveness and refunding. There's a lot of different ways, and inevitably there will be property owners that may fall just outside of that have been assessed and paid, and I guess that's part of the.
So, I mean, for refund, I mean, the funds obviously have to come from the utility for that. Is that a true statement? Or,
It's a good question.
and if that's the case, then, our threshold isn't gonna be anywhere close to where we need it to be, right?
Yeah. So a refund would be a one-time payment, but if the 1.1 million for the 5-year period, if that's what I think it is, I mean that's the refund amount for that time frame. And those funds would have to come.
We'd
from
have to
somewhere.
raise our finances as far as what the utility would be generating much more than 500, to be more than 500,000. Am I thinking about that incorrectly, or?
We could use savings, we can use ARPA funds, we can use, potentially, I think that's a question that we need to talk to Tim about and have him at the meeting and have him go through these numbers and what that 5-year period on the bottom half of that graph there, what does that entail? Because Joe and I were talking today, we're not sure what that number is made up of, if it's just solely special assessments or was there other things in there, because you look at some years, because if it's special assessments, there's one year that's over $400,000. Well, like our special assessments are $350. How did we collect over $50,000 more? So I think we need some clarification on the graph.
But there is some legitimacy in saying that, when the rules change, you can't go so far back and try to fix everything in the past. Like,
A couple of years is reasonable. Maybe
yeah, I mean, I've paid my fair share of special assessments. I don't think I'm gonna be seeing any of those coming back, but yeah, I don't think we can get too carried away with it.
So just to kind of recap a couple of those things, the outstanding balance would just be forgiven. The expenses, the city's already paid for the road projects. The balance that we hold maintained for those outstanding balances, that they would just be forgiven. It wouldn't, I guess, necessarily set the city back
Right.
any, because we're also then collecting a replacement
Right.
revenue amount through the utility. The refund, though, was different than that, where it's you
Those that
take
were paid
funds, existing
Yep.
funds, and return those.
Right.
Yeah, it's just I can understand the argument there, the folks that were advantageous and paid their stuff off are being punished.
Right.
Right. If we decide to cover the outstanding balance as well.
Just kind of make.
Can I speak to something real quick?
Go ahead.
So, when we first started talking about this and then it got delayed, to this year, we talked about possibly honoring the previous year, because there have been a lot of people that came in and attended those meetings regarding the transportation utility that had current bills, and we kind of put them off with a little bit of, well, if it does move forward, we'll potentially include that in the utility going forward. In my opinion, that's as far as we should go. I agree with some of what's said, is that you can only go back so far, and then we're kind of beating at the fund that's supposed to be fixing this going forward to fix previous mistakes.
I think I kind of touched on that early on as well. That's my feeling on it. I understand it's not a fair shake for everybody. Did you have something?
No, I did, but I do agree that whatever the council's gonna have to agree on a time
Right.
period. Whether it be 1, 2, 3, whatever you guys decide.
And right now,
But-
we're looking at 1 year back to 2021 at this point.
And I think by having the numbers figured out by Tim is what 1 year is, what 2 years specifically is. So you can kind of feel your comfortableness on how far back you wanna go
Sure.
and what that cost will be.
Well, I guess without talking to Tim, I don't know if he'd be comfortable in putting those numbers together before our council meeting or not. I mean,
We wanna think that this is kind of what it is, but we didn't get a chance to talk to him before he took a couple days off. So we wanna make sure these are what these numbers make up. And if this is truly what would the refund numbers would be.
so I guess back to the conversation of having another meeting before council. Is there a timeline in place where we think we'd be safe with a date to try to establish another meeting here to cover this topic?
We have a concrete contract that's letting on the 14th, Monday the 14th. And as a referral at the end of the meeting was to see about a meeting immediately before council
Okay.
to cover at least that item, but so at least Monday or Tuesday, at least there'd be a hope that afternoon on Monday when we open the bids that we could squeeze that in sometime before council.
Sure.
That's the same week as council.
Yep.
And that's Tuesday.
Council would be on Tuesday.
Yeah. I mean,
Is the council chambers open before
I see there's a Park and Rec Committee meeting at 4 on Monday.
on Monday?
So I don't know if you wanna
You want to
it
do
at
the same
5.
day as council, or you want to try to get it in on Monday?
you're saying Monday afternoon or after 4 o'clock would work?
Yep.
Sometime in there?
Yep.
I can't make it, like 4:30 would be the best, to 5, somewhere in there.
Maybe after Park and Rec at 5, and then we can avoid the before council meeting and then the rush of having a meeting and getting minutes done and.
So Monday after the Parks and Rec? I'm good with that.
Okay. Let's do that.
Do you want to reach out to Patrick on that one, or?
I can.
Yeah.
We're gonna go shoot for 5 o'clock, Bill.
Yes. So
Okay.
just to confirm then, have Tim put numbers together for, say, by year for five years?
How far do you want to
Actually,
go?
not for-
How far would you want to go back?
I'd say a maximum of 3 years.
Okay.
And obviously, let's go 3, 2, 1, just so we have something to look at.
And
And
that might be these, we can confirm with him, for sure.
I'd like to know if there's anything from Sue's side that is a red
Should you
flag.
have any concerns there, correct? Yeah.
We'll get going on that on next Monday.
All right. Any other questions regarding the transportation utility for Joe? Anyone? Okay, so at this point, we had made a motion, so are we just gonna move on with no action then? Or?
For the transportation utility?
Yeah, we'd be moving on, no action.
So if we need an action, we can do it on Monday when we have the whole, like everything will be rewritten.
That's what we'll shoot for.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
okay.
then
So
just
we'll
a
wait,
couple
we'll
of
wait till then.
questions.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, moving on to item number 5.
That's next Monday?
Yeah.
No,
No,
It'll be
the
the
following.
I'm sorry, the
14.
14.
14.
Yep. Moving on to item number 5, review the 2022 asphalt contract bid results and consider bid award. Joe?
So, you want me to go through that?
Yeah.
Yep, so, we solicited for bids for our 2022 asphalt contract, for asphalt paving and all our, public works contracts, for public works projects for this year, and, open bids on Tuesday, from American Asphalt, our sole bidder, nearly $487,000. That was about 10 or 12% over what we estimated. But we are still recommending approval of this and award of this contract for our asphalt for this summer.
We'll give Mr. Zachary a minute here. Okay, Matt, in a nutshell, just covered item number 5. American Asphalt was the sole bidder, and they're recommending that we approve. Any reasons why we couldn't get any other bidders?
Yeah, with asphalt, there's not as many contractors and they all kind of stick to their regions. So, I mean, this is typical.
Yeah.
You get one bid from American and,
I make a motion to accept that bid.
I'll accept, or second, sorry. Any other discussion?
No.
Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, item number 6, review the 2022 crushing contract bid results and consider bid award.
So, we also opened up bids for this on Tuesday, and I believe we had 4 bids. Engineer's estimate for $112,000 for our crushing contract for this year, and the lowest responsible bidder, PGA Incorporated, had a bid of just under $86,000, so underneath our estimate, and we are again requesting approval and awarding this contract to PGA Incorporated for I guess specifically $85,570.
I'll move to accept the bid for a crushing contract to PGA for $85,570.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Item number 7, review and consider a feasibility study to address noise and vehicle delays associated with the railroad on the west side of the city. Joe?
So I just threw some notes down in the referral document to consider soliciting for a consultant to do this study to address noise, vehicle delays associated with railroad, specifically targeting the crossings from Gaynor Avenue through High Street crossings. And then that study would consider not only rail-related relocations or grade separation possibilities, but also quiet zones to at least account for review the costs and, the pros and cons, what you get for the dollars versus other potential items, as well as funding opportunities, if there's any grant programs or things out there that could help fund any of the options. And I guess the goal of the feasibility study would provide the city with some initial answers, and quantifying what costs would be associated with each potential option, and of course what funding situations might be available to the city. There was a couple of years ago, there was $20,000 that was set aside to do a study somewhat similar to this. Those funds, they're not currently budgeted anymore that I'm aware of, but 20,000 I would think would go a long ways towards identifying answers to these questions. And so, the options are before the committee to pursue a study, and we could solicit proposals from consultants and bring them back at a future committee meeting for review, or you can modify the intent or scope of that study.
Thanks, Joe. This is my referral. So, this has been an issue in the city of Rapids for quite some time. It's come to several councils, and there just really hasn't been a whole lot of action on it. I think we owe it to the residents that are affected by this rail line to perform this study, and to at least see what the options are out there to try to better the situation with this particular rail line and the number of intersections here that it is highlighting. So I'll make a motion to approve the feasibility study funds of $20,000 as presented.
Can I ask a few more questions?
Sure.
Yeah. I guess. So this has never been done before, as far as any of us know?
I'm not exactly sure what decade it occurred in, but there's been other studies some time ago, probably like 20 plus years ago. I know there was a lot of work at the time when the expressway went in, as far as looking at options for, the city, along with the expressway build, the city relocated a bunch of rail. I don't know if it was in cooperation with DOT, and also looked at relocation of the existing rail line outside of the city, or at the westerly city limits.
Mm-hmm.
There are customers, or at least one customer that's on this stretch.
Chemical company.
Yep.
Right?
So that was always a big drawback to relocating the rail. But I don't know that, besides the quiet zone studies that we've done, with pricing, that's all been stuff in the last decade or so.
Mm-hmm.
We've done internally and projected what those costs would be.
That's not the only reason that train comes through there, is it?
No.
Okay.
They, from our conversations with CN, Rapids is largely a very congested pinch point for them for all of their rail traffic through the state, or at least through this general central part of the state. It funnels down into Rapids and gets congested. There's oftentimes a coal train that sits out on, is that 173, like towards Babcock, on a siding that's out there. And, they're waiting for traffic to come through further north here so that they can make room for the coal train to get in.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're often using whatever rail they have to get their train traffic through. Oftentimes there's trains that sit outside on different rail waiting.
Well, you'd think that they would have come up with a solution already, because this, from my understanding of this is like to have rail moved or to do anything different. It's pretty high up, like federal, right? Like it's not something Wisconsin Rapids has any power over where the tracks are in its city, do we?
Largely no, it would be in cooperation with the railroad.
Yeah.
the benefit for them is that, you know, their train operations
Sure.
improve significantly.
Yeah, if you're waiting, you're losing money, right? So have we approached them at all yet then? Or is that what this feasibility study is?
No, we haven't approached them. I mean, a quiet zone, you know, if that were the option, I mean, it basically gets rid of the noise issue, doesn't have to do anything for traffic. Grade separation, I guess it may not affect the rail at all if the road is either raised up or lowered in relationship to the rail. That would improve vehicle traffic through the city, and there again, it wouldn't impact train operations. Rail relocation, though, that would have maybe a mutual benefit to both parties. But I guess that's the I guess that'd be the goal, is to figure out what the options are and sort of quantify what they might cost.
Kind of the bad part is you gotta pay $20,000 to possibly figure out that there is no solution. You know, I don't, when you say grade separation, are we talking about like going over the train?
Or under.
Yeah, it's, I guess, whatever perspective, if you're talking about the train going over or under the road, or vice versa.
I would assume we'd have the support for this, right? I mean, there's enough people that complain about the train, but
I can hear the train at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I live over by where American,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah, they're crazy.
yeah. I'm in full support of this.
I'm over 30 blocks away and I can hear it clear as a day too.
I hear it at my house, but.
I second the emotion.
Okay, any more discussion? Tom, you got anything on this one?
What do we have left, do we have anything left from the quiet zone study in that, Joe?
We haven't updated to current cost,
A number of
but
years ago.
yeah, I think the last time we looked at it was 2016.
And that was, for quiet zone, it was like $700,000, I believe, was the cost of upgrading all the crossings. And then there was no guarantee that they wouldn't sound the horn.
Right. If
And
the
there's
train
all-
engineer finds that it's a safety thing, they can still, doesn't restrict them from doing it for an emergency type of situation.
Oh, I think they just enjoy it.
Can you restrict hours in those? Or, I don't, maybe restrict isn't the word, but can you set or recommend hours?
On when they can and when they can't.
Right, it makes sense to me, maybe at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but 3 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a time of day restriction. I know the way they look at it is there's a certain level of safety that the train horn provides. And depending on, so you need to, if you're not gonna blow the horn, you need to make up for that level of safety. You need to get back up to that threshold either through 4-quadrant gates at the intersections. None of ours are 4-quadrant gates, but another option to add safety measures is a median to keep vehicles from driving through the gates. So like West Grand has medians that help increase the level of safety at that intersection. And then a quiet zone needs to be at least a half mile long.
It's all to reduce CN or train liability.
I think this is money well spent.
Anything else? Okay, we'll go to vote. All in favor, respond with aye. Aye. Ayes have it. Item number 8, review the referral list. You had something to add there, Joe?
Yes, I have a referral on Smith Street. Where are my referrals here? To reconsider sidewalk, Smith Street and Cherry Streets. So this is the signatures on the back. So again, the ordinance provides, put the sidewalk back in, but it is a decision that can go before the committee and be considered if it's worthwhile to put back in or to remove.
So what's your take, right, or can I ask these questions right now? Like what's
Yeah.
your take, what's engineering's take on the sidewalks going in there?
My personal opinion, I mean, it all depends on what the overarching plan that the city sets in motion, but if, so if you follow the intent of the ordinance, it would be put the sidewalk back in. Is it necessary? It's kind of excluded little pocket of 2 local streets. It's kind of its own little subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
First Street nearby, that should have sidewalk on both sides, in my opinion. These streets, I don't see that there's much benefit. A mom with a bunch of young kids, she might think otherwise, but yeah. So there's that referral, and then of course the concrete contract item that I mentioned earlier. And if we have that March 14th meeting, I'd hope to get that concrete contract item on there. The Smith Street sidewalk we could potentially include at that time as well if you'd like. Or I don't think we'd be starting construction until April sometime, and we wouldn't be putting sidewalk in until probably June.
At least.
So there's time with this one if you want.
Should I recuse myself from this or no? I mean, I have a vested interest, huh?
Yeah, you probably should abstain. We can confirm with Sue though.
Yeah. I mean, so that whole back neighborhood there doesn't have sidewalks right now, but the intention is to put sidewalks in whenever those roads are redone. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, so there's over 50% of that street that has sidewalk in it.
It does have sidewalks already.
Yep. So it would be to complete that and fix up whatever needs fixing in the rest of it.
Hmm. I've refrained from asking you, but I'm gonna do it now since I'm gonna recuse myself probably. So we're wrapping it like by our buildings there? There's no sidewalk area, do you know where I'm talking about?
Smith to Railroad.
Smith to Railroad Street. I heard there's sidewalks going in front of our buildings, but I can't.
No, yeah, I mean, there's no, I don't think there's sidewalk down that far. It's more to the north.
It's
Where the
not
residential's
I
at.
think it stops at Spring, I wanna say.
Let's see if I can.
Well, the city there.
Oh, okay.
Either Spring or Cherry.
Yeah, probably Spring, I would think, because I think there's residences between Cherry and Spring maybe.
Sure.
Well,
But
Yeah.
I learned today, looking at your plans, that's Hemlock. I never knew the name of that street. Hemlock only has the one house on it.
Yeah, so I guess it ends at Spring Street.
So coming down Smith Street, it ends at Spring
So
Street.
from Riverview Drive, on Smith Street, from Riverview Drive down to Smith Street, that's where
So
existing
you can
sidewalk is today.
participate then, because it's not a financial interest to you.
Okay. Then are you asking for our,
I mean, do we think there's enough time between now and our next meeting to come to a decision on this, or do we put it off to the next?
well, okay, so the last time we did this was the
Fremont.
and it was supposed to go in there, and I said, well, then let's put it in, and then we took it to council, and they said, I don't think you should put it in because trucks go there, but what would be the, again, I don't wanna add any cost to people if I don't have to, but what would be the reason not to put it in? Because we want, the goal of the city is to put them in, right?
Well, that's my understanding of the ordinance provisions, is that, we designed it following the ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
I guess contrary to that, I mean, if I could present in the ordinance, there's, unless otherwise deemed appropriate by the Public Works Committee type of phrase
Mhm.
in the ordinance. So there's I guess a means to make changes to that.
Right. I mean, I you know, I kind of go back and forth on this because I hear from other council people, like, just follow the ordinance, you know? If it says this, then do that. But then we're being asked to not do certain ordinances, and I get a little confused because I feel like in the end, you're asking for our judgment or our, you know, whatever to say yes or no to things that aren't black and white.
Yeah.
So.
Sidewalk's a tough one.
Yeah, that's why I feel like a map would be a very beneficial thing for us to go through and avoid situations like this. 'Cause as you had mentioned, this would probably be an area where you may not draw an in sidewalk in this particular location. Is that a safe assumption?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think opinions on sidewalks have changed over the years too. I think we have less kids out. I think from myself growing up in the city, you know, how much we walked around and rode our bikes, and it's not as common as it once was.
Sure. Well, I would say we get this on our next meeting here before council.
Okay.
And in the end, you're asking us for a yes or a no?
Yeah.
Council.
So what do we?
We can make a
Waiting on-
decision then, you know, when Patrick's in
Okay.
attendance as well. And go from there.
All right. Sounds good.
Hopefully Patrick's in attendance.
We don't want to add too much on that agenda, just those two things then? Or is there something else you're?
No,
Those
those
map-
two, and then the transportation
Yeah, the
utility.
utility, yep.
Didn't you have to talk to us also about, something that was going on that morning, or no?
All the
The
bid.
bids.
Oh, yep, yep. Concrete contractor.
I mean, even the transportation utility, we're not going in depth, we're just kind of moving something forward.
We're getting to that credit information,
Yeah.
hopefully, and we can establish how far back we wanna go and what that looks like and where the
Right.
funds are coming from and all that.
Shouldn't be a 2-hour meeting, but
Right,
it might
not,
be.
But it could be, yeah. Hopefully, Mr. DeSorsi can be in attendance on that one as well, so.
We'll talk about it.
Okay. Okay, moving on, item number 9 is adjournment.
I'll make
Hey,
a
you
motion to
guys,
adjourn.
excuse me?
Go ahead, Dean. Go ahead, Dean.
Guys,
Yep.
I just want you to know you actually, it did quite make it from Edgerton to Wisconsin Rapids. I still got about 4 miles left, so. Let's keep it down.
Thanks for that, Dean.
I can keep talking. I'll make a motion
Yeah,
to
like,
adjourn.
I'm still at 73 for another 5 minutes, so.
Got a motion, I'll second. And we're all in favor, so.
Aye.
We will adjourn at 6:59.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for all
Thanks,
your
everyone.
work. I appreciate all your input there, Joe.
Yeah, good job, Joe and Nick.